Hello guys. Today I am in a much better internet position. I hope there won't be any problems today. And today we have a very interesting and important topic. It is world literature. Why is this topic important? Because our English literature is very fast turning into world literature. It has already turned into world literature, we can say. English literature departments may be called world literature departments very soon. Because in English literature departments, we are talking about literatures from across the world in many languages, pertaining to many cultures. And today, English literature is moving beyond its boundaries, breaking free from its boundaries. This topic, world literature, could be very important for you in research. There will be a lot of possibilities of doing research relating many different literatures. Of course, for NTA, NET and SET, this topic is very important. We have already been doing world classics discussion in Unacademy Special, and this session we are doing on world literature is complementary. So we talked about a lot of important world classics in Unacademy Special and their themes, characters in great detail. Today, in this short session on world literature, I am going to put things in perspective. And I'm going to talk to you why these texts are important. I will not be talking about the same texts from Unacademy Special. Most of these texts are different. Hello everyone, thank you for joining me. Yesterday there was a little problem with the internet connection. I'll do the same session again. I will reschedule it and do it again, don't worry. Yes, Sankalpa, I have come to your department in Bhubaneswar. Yes, I have been to so many universities across India with the grace of God and with the grace of all the professors and students. I have been able to get a lot of exposure that way, and students have also benefited from me. Thank you very much for reminding me. So I will, without wasting your time, I will go on to talk about the presentation, the world literature topic. Now, in the beginning, you will hear a lot of names that you are not used to. I'm going to talk to you about the theory behind world literature. David Damrosch is a very important critic who has written about world literature. Even though you don't know him, when you talk about world literature as a concept, his book is very important. David Damrosch defines world literature as all literary works that circulate beyond their culture of origin. Any literary work, that is beyond the culture of origin, that is circulated to other cultures, either in translation or in their original language. That is the meaning of world literature. Literary works that are circulated beyond their culture of origin in other cultures. Venkat Mani is another theorist who has written about world literature in detail in a book. Venkat Mani wrote about the worlding of literature. Worlding of literature is brought about by information transfer through print culture as well as digital culture. Worlding of literature means literature becomes part of the world. It becomes international. He presents a historical account of world literature in his renowned book, Recoding World Literature. If anybody is interested in this topic for research, this is a very important book, Recoding World Literature. We will talk about it in more detail. Libraries, print culture, and Germany's packed with books. Mani reveals the political foundations for a history of world literature. When you talk about a history of world literature, it has political foundations. It is political, philosophical, it is economic also, because it is about a process of exchange, a mode of reading, how to read books that are internationally famous. It is about classification, how to classify these books under what categories, because as you will see today, many of these books are against some cultures. It is showing the, ill treatment of certain people. It's about genocide, massacre. So it is not a very easy thing to talk about. It's about a lot of trauma. It's about power. It's about oppression. So world literature is a very problematic concept. This is the book that I talked about, Recoding World Literature. Libraries, print culture, and Germany's packed with books. This is the book written by Venkat Mani, a very important book, Venkat Mani. Then, the history of world literature. This has been a question in net before. It has been a PYQ. Goethe used the concept of Weltliteratur or world literature to describe the international circulation and reception of literary works in Europe. Goethe used the concept of Weltliteratur or world literature to describe what is international reception of literature, what are the works of non-Western origin that have come into circulation in Europe. Goethe used the term Weltliteratur, and it is popularized by Thomas Carlyle. Weltliteratur, the concept was popularized in England by Thomas Carlyle. The concept gained wide currency after his disciple Johann Peter Eckermann published a book called Conversations with Goethe. That was in 1835. Goethe believed that world literature would replace national literature. He believed at that time that what is important is world literature. World literature will replace national literature. This idea of a world literature or European literature was there in Matthew Arnold also. So it was a very cosmopolitan outlook that led to the concept of world literature. Everybody will read the same books across the world. Literary creativity is a universal phenomenon. This idea is what gave rise to the term world literature. Goethe believed that world literature would replace all national literatures. So, listen to me. World literature is against the concept of national literature. World literature is against the concept of national literature. National literature is limited. World literature is universal. Did you understand? Right. Now, world literature has a very specific history associated with Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels used the term world literature in their Communist Manifesto. It was not only Goethe at the beginning of the 19th century. Later, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels used this term in their Communist Manifesto of 1848 to analyze the cosmopolitan character of bourgeois literary production. Now listen to me. There is a difference between how Goethe looked at world literature as cosmopolitan and how Karl Marx looked at world literature as cosmopolitan. For Karl Marx, this is a little negative. Literature is bourgeois. Mainly, it is about the middle class. It is bourgeois. It carries bourgeois values. And bourgeois values are cosmopolitan, are everywhere. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels used the term world literature to analyze the cosmopolitan nature of bourgeois literary production. At the end of the Cold War, there was growing globalization. That is in the 20th century. After this, after first Goethe, then Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, then Cold War between USA and USSR. At the end of the Cold War, the growing globalization of the world economy and new waves of migration led to the expansion of popularity of world literature. That is when English departments became world literature departments. English literature broke free from the boundaries of European and American literature. You know, originally English literature was European literature. American literature, literature of UK, finished. Today, we talk about a lot of post-colonial nations, voiceless people, now writing even fourth world literature is part of English literature. So, English, after globalization, world literature became very, very cosmopolitan and democratic. This change illustrated the expansion of Norton anthology of world masterpieces. In the list of world masterpieces, there was the inclusion of post-colonial literature. So today, when I talk to you about 60 literary classics from across the world, I will also be talking to you about a lot of post-colonial literary works, literary classics. Please stay till the end because I'll be talking about a lot of important books today. So the Norton Anthology of World Masterpieces expanded, and in 1995 it came with a lot of non-Western selections. So remember guys, be futuristic. When you do research, when you study for exams, whatever I'm saying in 1 year always came true after a few years, because we can see the direction in which English literature studies is going, the direction in which the universities are going. Remember this, world literature is going to be very important in all exams. Our departments are already, many of the English departments are already doing research on, engaged in research on world classics. So do not ignore literatures from the rest of the world, from the other parts of the world. When you study, remember to study like that. Do your research in that way. Welcome everybody to this session. Thank you all for joining me. I'm seeing your messages. Now, for anybody who is interested in research on world literature, I have given you these two names already. These are the names you should look at. David Damrosch, B. Venkatmani, Franco Moretti, John Pizer, Manfred Schmeling, Christopher Prendergast. These people are not important for net. I'm saying these people are important for research. If you are interested, you can look up these writers, read their works, look at their works, and look at how they have read contemporary classics. Contemporary classics begins from Homer. What I mean is classics that are considered contemporary today. Our contemporary perception of the classics. Contemporary perception of the classics. That is what I mean. What are classics for us today? When I talk to you about 60 books or 50 books related to the classics, that are considered classics, you will see that almost all these books questioned the established conventions. Almost all these books questioned the established order. Slide is not clear because you have to change your settings. Your resolution, will you please change? Then it will be clear. I'm looking at YouTube here. The slide is clear. So for everybody, I don't think it is unclear. So please change your settings of resolution. Now, so contemporary classics, what are they? We start from Homer. Homer is definitely the beginning of all classics, of all literature. Homer's Iliad. Why is Homer's Iliad important? Because Homer's Iliad is about an entire civilization. Homer's Iliad is about entire people, their values, their ideology, the ways in which power worked for them. Did you understand? Why something is considered classic is a classic is because that book has an enduring significance. That book is not just a temporary thing. It is not a temporal text. It is about humanity. It is about all people. It is about the entire civilization or the historical moment in which it is written. So when you examine Homer's Iliad, it is not just a war story. Homer's Iliad is about people's aspirations. It is about people's character. It is about relationship. It is about people's, values, ideologies, how they were oppressed, how they changed. So when you look at a classic, you will be able to understand the values or ideologies that predominate an age. Homer is especially important because Homer has been considered a classic throughout the ages. From the Roman classical period, Greek classical period, Roman classical period onwards, you can see that Homer was a classic. So what gave Homer this enduring value? At that time, from Renaissance onwards, there was humanism. liberal humanism. From Homer, they learned what is important in human life, what is a human being. So, liberal humanism had values that were deeply rooted in classical traditions, starting from Homer. And later, liberal humanism was superseded, or it was subverted by literary theory and its perceptions. In the 21st century, we have a lot of coming back of liberal or humanism in a certain sense. So, Homer continues to have enduring significance, even though the way in which Homer is read changed. You know, the significance of Rome or Homer for the Greco-Roman classical people, that is completely different from the significance of Homer from the Renaissance people. That is different from how Homer's reception changed down the ages. So when you look at a classic, you not only talk about the production of the classic, but also about the reception. How the classic is received down the ages. What is the significance of the classic to us? If Homer is considered important today, if Iliad becomes a movie today, if Odyssey becomes a movie today, why? You can do research on why is this topic of Homer still relevant today? In what way does Homer connect with us? So, when you talk about a classic, you talk not only about the writer's traditions, the writer's culture and ideology, but also the reader's culture and ideology. Did you understand? As you know, Homer's Iliad is about the Trojan War, 1 week in the Trojan War, and even though the Trojan War took place over 10 years, only the last 1 week is depicted. It is taking place over 10 years. And the relationship between the Greeks and the Trojans, as well as between the Greek heroes. This is the theme of Iliad. And its sequel, Odyssey, continues it. It is about people's beliefs, it is about adventures, it is about the concept of the hero. A lot of later theorists have talked about the concept of the hero starting from Homer. You must have heard of the mythology-based book, A Hero with 1,000 Faces by Joseph Campbell. Adorno and Horkheimer used the example of Odyssey in their dialectic of enlightenment. So, it has an enduring significance even in literary theory. It is not just an age-old story. And then in the Greek classical period, we had texts written by Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. These tragedians laid the foundations of world literature. Even though at that time in Greece, only a few people watched these plays, later it spread across Europe. The plays of Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides spread across Europe. Their perception of human nature, the techniques with which they presented human life and human choices, human trauma, that inspired whole traditions across Europe. Centuries across Europe were influenced by Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. And even today, there are retellings. In the 20th century, in the 21st century, there are retellings of Iliad, Odyssey, Oedipus, etc. I have talked to you in World Classics how David Malouf's Ransom is based on Iliad. Jean Anouilh's Antigone is based on Sophocles' Antigone. So Antigone, even today, continues to be a representative of rebellion against state power. It is a representation of a people's anger against tyranny. So it continues to have relevance. As you know, Western literary tradition is based upon this ideal tragedy, Oedipus the King. I would say that Oedipus became a classic or canon because of the promotion given to it by Aristotle. To use very contemporary terms, Aristotle promoted this text. Aristotle gave a lot of importance to Oedipus Rex, analyzed it, and later it was given importance by many writers when they rewrote and based their text based on Oedipus. Freud gave importance to Oedipus and developed the Freudian idea of Oedipus complex. So, as myth critics would say, these ancient stories that were told by these ancient masters have a lot of deep connections with contemporary society also. It is the underlying structure that myth and early legends like this provide to a culture. So, Oedipus, Antigone, etc., if you look at them as myths that have been turned into literature, you will understand the importance of myth criticism or archetypal criticism of Maud Botkin, Northrop Frye, etc. Even though these are age-old stories, they provide a certain archetype or a recurring pattern. The pattern in which these stories are told, what kind of characters appear in these stories, those kinds recur in later literature also. So even today, we are still reading about contemporary heroes who are indirectly modeled on Oedipus or Antigone. As you know, Sophocles' Theban trilogy, it is Oedipus the King or Oedipus Rex, then Oedipus at Colonus, and Antigone. These are the three major texts of the Theban trilogy. Of the same time is Euripides' Medea. Medea is a powerful play about a mother and a wife who is taking blood revenge on her own husband. She is, even in the 21st century, we wouldn't dare to create a character like that. She is a proto-feminist. Her husband, Jason, left her and she had to take revenge on him. She kills her own children for this purpose. She kills her husband's bride. So, from the beginning of Western civilization and Western literature, we can see the conflict between good and evil. When a woman kills her children to take revenge on her husband, how far can you justify it? When Nora Helmer in Doll's House left her children because she could not accept her husband's patronizing attitude, how far do you justify it? These are not middle class texts. These are texts that stand beyond middle class perceptions of morality and culture, and they look at primeval humanity, essential humanity. So, is Medea an anti-hero or an anti-heroine? Anyway, Euripides, who was a revolutionary playwright, he chose to question established conventions. He wrote a play with Medea as the protagonist. That is an amazing thing to do. Even though Aristophanes' Frogs did not accept Euripides as the greatest playwright. He accepted Aeschylus as the greatest playwright. I would say that today, for a 21st century reader, enlightened reader, probably Euripides will appear as a greater playwright than Aeschylus. Because a classic is it is not about portraying the status quo or portraying mainstream realities. A classic is about questioning the status quo, transgressing borders, moving beyond the established ideas, showing the other side, creating a new era in itself, creating a world in itself, heralding a new era of perception, new perceptions on society, gender, class, nationhood, etc. Are you able to follow me? So, Euripides' Medea is definitely a classic, a daring classic. So is Aristophanes' Lysistrata, where women decided to deny sexual favors to their husbands so that their husbands will stop war. That is an amazing text that is so contemporary. When you read the classics that were written even in the 8th century BC or 6th century BC, you understand that there is something strong and powerful in them that connects with us that probably even today we are not mature enough to understand or accept. So that is about Euripides' Medea. Then later in the Roman classical period, we have the Aeneid. The Aeneid is an epic journey As you know, after that, in so many literatures, down to the 21st century, in modernist literature, in feminist literature, in post-colonial literature, we talk about epic journeys. The concept of epic journey started with Odyssey and Aeneid. Aeneid is the story of how Aeneas founded the city of Rome. Suddenly one day he can't go and found the city of Rome. From Troy he travels, undergoes adventures and misadventures, like Odyssey. Odysseus also underwent. And that epic journey, like you see in Picaro's novels, is a means of coming to terms with himself, understanding what his destiny is, maturing. The hero matures because of the journey. The hero learns because of the journey. The hero gets empowered because of the journey. And the journey shows a psychological maturation, as well as it shows the culture of the contemporary times, the times in which the story is set. The hero's encounters with many people, forging relationships, enmity, fighting, all these things are allegorical or metaphorical of life in those times. When you read Aeneid in a deeper sense, beyond the plot, beyond the story of Aeneid, when you read it allegorically, you will see that it is like the saga of early Rome in the beginning of the ADs. And that is why the Aeneid became the founding text for much of English literature in the Renaissance period. All the epics, all the major texts in some ways related to the Aeneid, starting from the epics Fairy Queen and Paradise Lost. So the Aeneid is historically important because Western civilization developed from Rome, in a sense, and also aesthetically important because Aeneid is the foundation of all literature, in a sense, of Renaissance Europe. And it is also great poetry. It gave Europeans the traditions of poetry. How European literature is based on Latin literature and also indirectly on Greek literature. Through Latin, they learned about Greek. That you can see when you study the importance of Aeneid in Western literature. So, how are all these things useful to you? As a foundation for your studies or research in world literature, you can start writing blogs, you can start writing some research papers, looking at the impact of Aeneid on 20th century literature or post-colonial literature, if at all there is. You can start informally writing something about it, then formally writing research papers on it. Probably you will become a scholar. All the scholarship is ultimately going to help you. A professor of English, which is what all of you want to become, or all of you are in the process of becoming, a professor of English should be well versed in the classics. Without that, you're not going to get anywhere. We are not going to get anywhere. So this is the proper foundation for your career. Now, after the Aeneid, the next important classic is, of course, Dante's Divine Comedy. Are you liking this session, guys? If you're enjoying and benefiting from it, please let me know. Please put a post, message, so that I'll know. The Divine Comedy, as you know, also laid the foundations of European literature. Without all these texts, there is no European literature. Dante was a father of not father, but a very important figure in Renaissance humanism. The father of humanism is Petrarch. Divine Comedy is also allegorical. Divine Comedy is about the journey of a soul in afterlife. Sorry, after death, afterlife. Afterlife means after death. The soul is journeying from hell to purgatory to paradise. So it is about spirituality. It is about what life means. It is about what is important in life. You should not sin in life. If you are sinners, you go to hell. And from there, when you suffer and atone for your sins, take it allegorically. You may or may not believe in afterlife. You may or may not believe in hell. But all of us believe in good and evil. If we do evil, we will have to suffer for it. And then we will repent. And then we become pure. We'll be ready for paradise. So this is about every man. This is about humanity. This is about all literature. Dante has directly influenced Renaissance literature a lot because Dante supported writing in the vernacular. Dante showed what is important in literature. He, like for example, how to write, how to use symbols, how to mold a character, how poetry should be written, and what it means to be human. So these are epic poems that are the pillars of world literature. Divine Comedy gave direct allegiance or professed its direct connection with Virgil. Virgil's Aeneid is the model for Divine Comedy. That is why Virgil is the guide of Dante in hell and purgatory. And Beatrice, his sweetheart, is the guide in paradise. A virtuous woman in this Renaissance period, a virtuous woman is the symbol of God, of divine love, divine grace. And Beatrice is a virtuous woman. Her virtue is her beauty. And Divine Comedy thus laid the established the conventions of sonneteering and Petrarchanism also. Because there also a woman, a beautiful, virtuous woman, is the paragon of divine grace. So the basic understanding of European and Renaissance literature stems from all these major texts. As all of you know, Miguel de Cervantes is the world-famous author of Don Quixote or Don Quixote. So many of us have heard about it. We know a little bit about it. But as students and teachers of English literature, why is Don Quixote important? Why is it so famous? Why is it considered an archetypal novel on which all novels are perhaps based? We should be able to answer that question. As I have already shown you in Unacademy special class, this is the model of Picasso's drawing of Don Quixote. This is not Picasso's, but it's modeled on Picasso's. And Don Quixote is a satire on a man who cannot distinguish between reality and fiction and imagination. He is lost in his imagination. He reads books and thinks that he has become a knight, and he starts acting like a knight. This is true for all of us. I was just a student wonderstruck by literature. I didn't know anything. I still don't know anything. I'm learning. I'm trying to make sense. I'm trying to be worthy of being a teacher. I'm still standing in the banks of that vast ocean of literature. I have not even drunk a cup full. And what am I doing here? I am like Don Quixote, imagining that I'm a teacher, and here I am teaching in YouTube to whoever who wants to listen. All of us are Don Quixotes. All of us are imagining an identity and living it. That is what Jacques Lacan also said. We are all having an imaginary state of existence and a symbolic state of existence. Real, imaginary, symbolic. The real is lost to us. We don't know the real. We only know the imaginary and the symbolic. All literature is about imagination. All literature is about the boundaries between reality and fiction. All literature is about how human beings try to be something beyond themselves. In a way, all of it is about it. So what is the connection between the reader and the character that you read in the novel? Does the reader identify with the character? How far? All that is based on Don Quixote. In a sense, Don Quixote is about all that. Sweetie is asking why Dante considered Virgil as his inspiration. Because Virgil was the greatest Roman writer at that time. In the Renaissance period, Virgil's Aeneid was considered the most central text, the most basic text. Europeans did not read Greek language directly. They knew about Greek masters only through Latin translations. They only knew Latin. And the greatest epic in Latin was Virgil's epic. That is why. Aeneid was more popular than you can imagine. And Don Quixote increasingly made sense to readers in the 20th century, 21st century. We understand Don Quixote as a satire on the human condition, a satire on each and every one of us, how we try to be something that we are not. Did you understand? The great classics are not about heroes. They are about ordinary people trying to be heroes. They question heroism a lot. Even in Aeneid or Iliad or Odyssey, heroes are shown with flaws, with vices. Achilles is angry. Zeus is lustful. The ordinariness of human life. How small and frail we all are. And how we are sustained by grand perceptions of ourselves. That is the beauty of human life. So much little things, small things, as Arundhati Roy would say. So many small things in connection with big things. All the big things of life and small things of life together make up a classic. Are you able to understand? If you like this session, please like the video also, guys. And will you please share the video with your friends in your groups? Thank you very much. So, learning literature is not about memorizing summaries, memorizing characters, somehow memorizing bits or objective type questions so that you can pass exams. Learning literature is about understanding why these classics, these great texts, these great writers are the great writers. Why are they classics? What do they mean to us? In what way are we changed by them? When you study literature, why do you study it? How do you apply it in life? Why? How will you become a better human being? Or how will you contribute to a better society because of these works? That is what literature is about. My dear friends, you are all not just going to be professors of English. You are all torchbearers of a culture. A better society, a better future is in our hands. We can help people to develop a tolerant attitude, broad-mindedness. We can help people to be humble, to be helpful to others, to be kind to others. We can make a better society if only we show our students what literature is all about. Literature is about dispelling ignorance and anger and rebellion. And rebellion in a positive sense is necessary, but not destructive. Literature is so positive. Even very bad stories of trauma and anger and evil are ultimately becoming the foundations of a better society. Even stories about evil or sin ultimately teach us how to be better human beings. So world literature is so very important. The connections between all literary works in the world, why they are classics and the canon, what they mean to us. Thank you so much everyone for your tremendous support. Let me move on. The next classic I want to talk to you about is Candide. Now let me ask you another question. Isn't Unacademy special classes on world classics joining hands here in this session? Aren't you making a better sense of the classics because of this session? So join Unacademy special and take all the PDF I have given there. So many points are there in Unacademy special PDF. Use all that. And then when you look at it in this perspective, you will really develop as great scholars. When you teach, you should teach like this. Showing your students how to read rather than what to remember. So, Candide is a very major text by Voltaire. It was a very major text of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was a philosophical movement of the 17th and 18th century in Europe. And the Enlightenment gave a lot of importance to reason. Remember, before the Enlightenment, there was so much oppression of the political powerful political people. There was so much oppression by the religious leaders who were corrupt at that time. There was so much ignorance. Ordinary people suffered so much. And Enlightenment wanted a change. Enlightenment wanted to inspire people to be tolerant, to be broad-minded. Enlightenment wanted to solve all human problems using reason. Enlightenment was a wonderful movement that brought a lot of new ideas. Secularism came because of Enlightenment. Before that, people were fighting for religion, in the name of religion. But Enlightenment did not complete its purpose. Enlightenment did not achieve all the great things as much as it wanted, which is what Adorno and Horkheimer have talked about in their book, Dialectic of Enlightenment. Adorno and Horkheimer have said that Enlightenment is not complete. Enlightenment is wonderful. It had so many good things. It was about the importance of reason in solving human problems. But the Enlightenment also did not completely attain its aims. That is seen in Voltaire's Candide as well. In Voltaire's Candide, there is a critique of the Enlightenment. Enlightenment ideas are presented, they are also made fun of. Candide was a very controversial text because Candide had the far sight to show that Enlightenment is not completely successful and Enlightenment has failed. In Voltaire's Candide, you see a young, naive young man called Candide from the place called Westphalia. And this man is learning a lot of theory from his teacher Pangloss. His teacher Pangloss is teaching him big theories, metaphysico, theologo, cosmology. What a big theory. You will think, wow, this theory will solve everything. But Candide learns from his life that this theory did not solve anything. It was utterly futile, useless. When he went out into the world, he understood that this theory is not about the world. He cannot survive in the world using this theory. So, Candide is a book that made fun of philosophers, of politicians, of theologians. All kinds of people were made fun of by Voltaire's Candide. Voltaire was a very major figure of the Enlightenment. He propagated Enlightenment ideals, but also critiqued or questioned Enlightenment ideals. And Candide is considered like a founding text of modernity. Voltaire's Candide is very, very important. Are you okay, guys? Everything is fine? You're enjoying this? Am I helping you? Just asking because some new people might have joined. And also, I need you to interact with me. Say something to me. I'm reading your messages also. Thank you very much, all those of you who appreciate it. Please remember to like the video and share with your friends. When I say useful things, please help me to reach out to more people so that they will also benefit from it. If the session is no good, I will not ask you to share. But if you like the session, please share. Hello, Neelakandan. Hello, everybody. I read all your messages, but I didn't reply because there is so much to cover. Yes, another important classic I want to talk about is Victor Hugo's The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Victor Hugo was a French writer. He was an early romantic in France. The Hunchback of Notre Dame is Quasimodo, a misshapen man. He looks like a monster, but he is actually like an angel. He loves one girl called Esmeralda, a gypsy girl who is walking down the streets of Paris, of Notre Dame, and he tries to save her, and he attains death with her. You know, the Hunchback of Notre Dame is a symbol of all that is good and evil in a society. The Cathedral of Notre Dame, which a few years ago caught fire, that was very famous, very disastrous. And the Cathedral of Notre Dame in this novel becomes a symbol of decay, of moral degeneracy. This is a classic text. A woman is, Esmeralda is unfairly accused of murder, and only Quasimodo is able to help her. He loves her. And even though all the other men involved in the novel are like more powerful and better men than Quasimodo, at the end, Quasimodo attains the status of an angel. Quasimodo is a hunchback. He is a misshapen ward of the very powerful Archdeacon Frollo. He's a religious man. And Frollo eyes Esmeralda. He wants Esmeralda. He wants to rape Esmeralda. Esmeralda is helped by one Captain Phoebus. Captain Phoebus pretends to love Esmeralda, but he just wants to use her for sex. Esmeralda but loves him. There is also another man, Gringoire, who is a poet. And in a mock ceremony, Esmeralda becomes the wife of Gringoire in a kind of game. So one man is there, Frollo, who wants to rape her. Captain Phoebus is there, who is pretending love to her. Gringoire is there, who doesn't love her, but he, in a mock ceremony, becomes her husband. And still, at the end, when she dies, she is put to death for murder. She dies a virgin. And her dead body is embraced by Quasimodo, and he attains burial along with Esmeralda. So this is a novel that has very deep biblical overtones. And in this novel, you see what is enduring in human life. A very magnificently beautiful presentation of good and evil in life, in society. It is a masterpiece, and it uses romantic techniques like symbolism. That is Victor Hugo's The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Right? Let me move on to the next very famous French work, Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. Victor Hugo's Les Miserables is the story of Jean Valjean, who is accused of, he is put to prison for stealing a loaf of bread. And his coming to terms with his guilt, and actually he is not an out and out bad man. He just thieved, yes, but he's a good man. He's a wonderful man. And at the end, he is completely redeemed. Before he dies, he confesses, he helps, another wounded man. And the story of redemption, sin and redemption, and also society's perception of sin. What does society consider sin or crime? And how far are criminals completely criminal? Sometimes the society is also criminal. The society is the reason for crime. Crime exists because of the society sometimes. So such discussions are part of Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. There's a very famous scene in this novel when Jean Valjean is walking through the sewers of Paris. The dirty water of Paris is flowing. He's wading through it, carrying an injured man to safety. So whose dirt? It is not Jean Valjean's dirt. It is the dirt of the city of Paris. So if you look at it in the Foucauldian manner, you will see that evil and good are not watertight compartments. Good is not completely good. Evil is not completely evil. And society needs lunatic asylums and prisons so that some people can be put there. They are the other of the mainstream society. Did you understand? So, Les Miserables by Victor Hugo is a very famous text. It's also the longest running musical in the world in West End in London. This is Cosette, Jean Valjean's ward. He takes care of this girl, Cosette, who is the daughter of Fantine. Yes, Alice, there is always a grey zone. So this is what the novel Les Miserables is about. It is famous for all its adaptations. So many movies and graphic novels and plays and musicals that were made out of this novel. The next world classic that is part of world literature is Crime and Punishment of the 19th century by Fyodor Dastavsky. Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment is a classic because Again, it is about sin and society's perception of sin, a human being's earnest desire to transcend his limitations and become a Superman. Can we be Supermen? Is it even possible? That is the main theme of Crime and Punishment. Crime and Punishment is the story of Rodion Raskolnikov. He is an educated man and a very intelligent man. He thinks that educated, intelligent men will not do anything wrong. Even if apparently they do something wrong, that is not wrong. But ultimately, it will be for the good of the society. It is justified. So he is thinking of many supermen like Napoleon. And he is doing one crime, a well-planned crime, in such a way that society will benefit from that crime. He kills a pawnbroker called Alyona Ivanovna, who is a very bad woman, because she is taking money on interest. She's giving money on interest, and she is taking a lot of money from people. She is looting people. Raskolnikov thinks that she is a louse and he will get rid of the louse for the society. But he was wrong. After he committed the murder, there is no evidence. He cannot be implicated. Nobody can catch him. But his conscience will not leave him free. His conscience works on him. And the trauma that he undergoes, the punishment that he undergoes is mental. Ultimately, he confesses and embraces punishment. He accepts punishment because he cannot live in guilt. So, most of the time, the entire drama of this novel is mostly happening in the mind of Raskolnikov. Most of the time, we human beings do not need anybody else to punish us. Our own conscience is our greatest punisher. So Raskolnikov understands that he is not, after all, a Superman. Raskolnikov understands that he has limitations, even though he takes a lot of time to accept it. His soulmate in the novel is Sonia or Sophia, who is actually a prostitute. Society would consider a prostitute as a fallen woman. Society will not look, kindly upon a fallen woman. But she's like an angel to Raskolnikov. She gives him a Bible. She helps him to confess. So these are novels. These classics we are talking about, these classics of world literature we are talking about, are works that changed human perception of morality, of sin and crime, of politics, of power. The society, the world changed because of these texts. They are not simple texts. They have given us a new perception of ourselves. In Raskolnikov's story, there is another man, Svidrigailov. Svidrigailov is actually an evil man. He tries to rape Raskolnikov's sister, Dunya. But he understands that he is evil. He understands his limitations. And Svidrigailov just commits suicide. While Raskolnikov, till the very end, tries to believe that he is right. Let me take this as an allegory. Two people, both of them are doing the same mistake. Both of them are doing the same crime. One of them repents and kills himself. Another man does not repent. He keeps justifying his crime. Which of them is the greater criminal? The man who justifies himself, the man who doesn't accept his crime, is definitely the greater criminal. This is a very Christian attitude, a Christian idea. You have to repent. You have to confess. That is what Christianity believes, or probably any religion would believe. So, Raskolnikov is the greater criminal. But you feel sympathy for him because his mind itself is his punishment. Ultimately, he is punished like Macbeth is punished by his own mind. Macbeth is like Raskolnikov because Macbeth is punished by his own mind. Are you able to follow me? Guys, when you are quiet, I'm scared. Are you there? Are you enjoying? Is it okay? If there is anything, please let me know. I'm eager to interact with you and hear your comments. Did you like the little discussion of crime and punishment? Classic masterpiece by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Dostoevsky has also written many other classics. I have only taken a representative few here. Dostoevsky's Brothers Karamazov is also equally important, as you all know. Thank you, guys. So, with your permission, I'll move on. The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandra Duma. That is another French classic. Oh my God, the greatest works of world literature are all French and Russian. French literature and Russian literature. There is nothing like it. It is amazing. The Count of Monte Cristo is also the story of one man's life and choices. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, everybody. It is about one man's life. How a few people, evil people and villains, they destroy Dante's life. And how Dante takes revenge. This, I think, is the model for most mainstream movies. Thank you, Sai. Yeah, I think I am developing as a storyteller. Thank you. Your words inspire me to do better. Thank you, everyone. So I was saying that The Count of Monte Cristo is like an archetypal novel, which is about how a man has aspirations, a good man, he has aspirations, but sometimes there are evil forces that destroy your dreams, that destroy your actions. Dante experienced more or less the same thing. Montego, Danglars, Villefort, these villains destroyed his life, took his girlfriend, took his job, put him in prison unfairly, and ultimately Dante takes revenge on them. Dantes, Dantes. That is how it is written. This is the island prison Chateau d'If where he was imprisoned. And he swims from there, goes to Monte Cristo, gets a treasure, becomes rich, comes back and takes revenge. Like any revenge-based text, revenge tragedy or revenge novel, this novel is also about justice. Revenge plays are always about justice. Haven't you noticed? Justice and denial of justice. Somebody takes in their own hands to carry out justice. So this is how you should perceive the concept or the motive of revenge in works. And then we come to the very famous classic A Doll's House by Hendrik Ibsen. Hendrik Ibsen's Doll's House is important because it completely changed the perceptions of a middle class family. What is the value of a middle class family? How does a middle class family give equal treatment to the man and woman? Or do they ever? This is the question behind A Doll's House. A Doll's House is about Nora, the wife of Thorvald Helmer. Thorvald is a very good husband according to mainstream perception. Mainstream perception, in mainstream perception, Thorvald is like most husbands. He takes care of his wife. He adores her. He does not give her much freedom. He patronizes her. He takes his wife like a doll or a plaything, not very seriously. And he always values his own ego, his own, position and honor more than his wife's. That is how many husbands are, because society teaches them to be like that. This is the ideal of masculinity. Remember, it is in the 19th century that Hendrik Ibsen questioned this ideal of masculinity. And he made Nora realize that she should not be patronized. She needs her freedom. She needs to discover herself. And she just walks out on her husband. Even though some of you, even in the 21st century, might say that it was wrong for Nora to walk out. She must have talked to her husband. She must have given him another chance. For Ibsen to make her slam the door in the 19th century was a revolution itself. All of feminism owes to Ibsen. So that kind of a new way of looking at life, at morality, at the construction or the structure of the family, that is so amazing. That is why A Doll's House is a classic. It is a classic of realism. It is Hendrik Ibsen who introduced realism on stage. And this play inspired centuries of literary works. At least more than a century has passed. And every age that followed Ibsen's age has looked upon A Doll's House as a classic. Ibsen's other works also similarly questioned mainstream ideas. So did Gustave Flaubert's Madame Bovary. Madame Bovary is the wife of a mediocre husband. And her fault is that she read romances. She got enamored of an upper class life. She wants luxury. She wants upper class lifestyle. And she becomes frustrated with her life. She gets involved with 2 other men. She takes extramarital affairs. She starts spending money, buying things. She got into debt. And she had to ultimately commit suicide. This work is a great work because it shows an erring woman. This woman is not a great, perfect woman, but she is human. In that society, women did not have equal opportunities. There was no way a woman like Madame Bovary could find opportunities. So they inevitably sometimes fell to extramarital affairs or prostitution. They were not allowed to work. So Madame Bovary is a very new look at womanhood and femininity. Madame Bovary is a critique of 19th century French society. It is nothing short of a revolution. You don't have to show perfect, ideal people in literature all the time. When you show falling women or erring men and analyze the society through them, that is also a great way of taking the society towards a better future. So Madame Bovary is very important because it was nothing like anything ever written. It was a new kind of a novel, and it laid the foundations of naturalism. Every human being is the product of his or her environment. The next classic I want to talk to you about is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. This is also, like Madame Bovary, a story of adultery. Anna Karenina does not get into debt. Anna Karenina does not have many extramarital affairs, but she has a very unromantic husband who doesn't understand her, who doesn't connect with her, vibe with her, and she falls in love with another man. But in those days, women could not get divorced. Even in these days, today also, it is very hard for a woman to get divorced. To fall in love with another man and to live with him is very difficult. Society just smothers women. Women have very few rights compared to men. So Anna Karenina chose us to fall in love. She was an absolutely amazing woman. Beautiful and powerful. And she chose to fall in love with the man she wanted. Her husband wouldn't grant a divorce. She just left him and went and lived with her lover. But then she felt so traumatized by guilt and social ostracization that finally she committed suicide. Thank you, Rani, for that amazing appreciative message that you have given. Thank you very much. So why Anna Karenina is important is because, like Madame Bovary, it gives a very totally new, unconventional perception of womanhood, of morality, of what is right and wrong, of society. It is so much ahead of its times. Anna Karenina is ahead of its times. It has great insight into a womanhood as the people of those times did not have. And then Anton Chekhov's Cherry Orchard. Cherry Orchard is a play which shows the decline of aristocracy and the rising of the middle class. Cherry Orchard was written about the time when slavery ended, serfdom ended in Russia. And Cherry Orchard is a magnificent play that shows the history of the times. Cherry Orchard shows how aristocracy slowly declined, and they still held on, the aristocrats still held on to their honor, their beliefs, their ideology and values, but they had to leave the scene. The middle class took over. The middle class took over, and the humongous, gigantic cherry orchard that belonged to Ranevskaya's family is bought by Lopakin, a middle class man whose father was a servant of Ranevskaya's family. The family of Ranevskaya is aristocratic, and their humongous cherry orchard is bought, cherry trees are cut down, and Lopakin is going to build houses there. This is a symbol of the decline of one age and the beginning of another. That is why this play is so very important in world literature. There are so many minor details of the play that I do not want to go into right now. But I request you, all of you, please read all these works that I have mentioned, at least a little bit. Without knowing them, you cannot know English literature properly. You know, why you should study European literature is not only because of exams. Even if in exams questions won't come, you still should read European literature and these world classics, because without that, English literature doesn't exist. Unless you are a true scholar, you cannot be a good teacher. So please take time out and read these classics at least a little bit. Out of Africa by Isaac Dinesen is a book of a totally different kind. Now we begin contemporary classics of the 20th century. Out of Africa is by Isaac Dinesen or Karen Blixen. It is about the racist relationships in South Africa between the whites and the blacks. She is a white woman, and she's talking about their coffee plantation and how they ultimately had to leave the coffee plantation and come away. So colonialism and black-white racist relations, racial relations rather, is a very important theme of world literature, and it begins with books like Out of Africa. As you know, there are so many books that have come after this, contributing to colonial and post-colonial literature that have explored racial relations. And this is one of the earliest. Dracula by Bram Stoker. It is not only a horror story that is very popular. It is popular because of its hundreds of adaptations and retellings and graphic novels and animations and so on and so forth. But it is also important because Dracula is a novel that questions mainstream ideas of politics, of sexuality, of morality, of evil. It gives a completely new perception of sexuality, morality, evil, power. And Dracula is one of the earliest novels to directly influence popular culture. Through its many adaptations and retellings, it has created a whole revolution in popular culture. So Dracula has been re-examined in the context of literary theory and cultural studies in terms of its impact on ideology and power. Are you enjoying this discussion, guys? So that is another world classic that we need to know from a totally different perspective, perhaps. It is not just about an exciting horror story, but it is about new ways of looking at society, morality, politics and power. Right. The next novel is Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha. This is like a class on, today what I'm doing is like a class on British, American, Indian, European, every literature together, isn't it? Yeah. I'm enjoying it as much as you are. Hermann Hesse was a German writer. His Siddhartha is a very major book that deals with philosophy and spirituality. Siddhartha is a story of a boy who lived in the time of Gautama Buddha. Thank you, Girish. I'm not a mountain of knowledge or anything. I'm just an enthusiastic student standing on the shore of the ocean of literature. I'm an enthusiastic student. That is true. So Hermann Hesse wrote about a young boy who lived in the time of Gautama Buddha and how their lives interact. Siddhartha is a story of, like Paulo Coelho's Alchemist, perhaps. It's a story of quest. It's a story of what is good. It's a story of, pursuing your dreams and attaining meaning in life. It is an amazing allegory of human life. Very important classic. Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. The Metamorphoses by Franz Kafka. Ovid wrote Metamorphoses. Kafka wrote The Metamorphoses. It is an allegory of human condition again. Gregor Samsa one day woke up and found that he had turned into a gigantic roach, a cockroach. It is an allegory, of course. Nobody turns into a cockroach. But somehow, all of us have the potential to have this transformation. For example, a person, God forbid, nobody should have such traumatic experiences, but still, for the sake of the example, I'm saying, a man who's living a very good life. I will tell you the stories of some people I know. One of my cousin's friends, he was in the prime of his life. He passed engineering degree. Long ago it was. 30 years ago perhaps. He passed his engineering degree and he was going to marry his longtime girlfriend. And I know this man. And he got a job also. He was just starting his life with a lot of hope and everything. And then he had a tragic accident. He didn't die. But he became an invalid. Confined to a wheelchair. I think he couldn't even speak. Oh my God. Sometimes tragically things like that happen. Some people, we hear about, we see such stories in movies. A man is working and taking care of the family and everybody. Then he retires, grows old. Nobody wants him anymore. Such people are potentially people who have turned from human into some roach, ungeziefer. It is the sad story of how people become outcasts. Sometimes, for example, Anna Karenina. Anna Karenina is a Gregor Samsa because she was living a wonderful life as an aristocratic woman, rich and powerful. And the only mistake she did is she chose to follow her passion. She desired to live with a man who understood her and loved her. And Ronsky loved her. But she couldn't accept a life with him. She couldn't live with him because she happened to be married already. And in the society, she turned into a roach. You understand? She turned into a monster, an adulteress. And she had to commit suicide. So, how people sometimes turn into monsters or outcasts. That is the sad story that Franz Kafka tells about in this novel, and how power works upon us. When he was the earning member of the family, everybody loved him. But once he turned into the roach, nobody wants him. They just want him to die. So what is the value of a human life? The value of a human life is the value of your work, the value of the money you make. Let me ask you, friends. Today, you are listening to me because I'm able to give you, with God's grace, I'm able to give you something valuable. Tomorrow, if I'm no longer able to give you anything valuable because of some tragic reason, will I still have the acceptance in society? Will I still have... So what does it mean? We have a sort of sad situation in life. Make the most of the present. Today, when you can study, when you can teach, when you can help others, do it. Tomorrow, we don't know what's going to happen to us. Human life is like that. It has always been like that from the time immemorial. Nothing is permanent for us. We don't know what is in store for the future. Live in the present. Make the most of the present. Give as much good things to society, to life as you can in this moment. Don't postpone it to another day. Because we are all victims of so many external factors which are not in our control. So if we are good today, if we are able to do good things today, probably that will have a lasting effect. So in so many ways, Kafka's metamorphosis speaks to us. Gregor Samsa speaks to us. Gregor Samsa is us. All classics that I talked about are works. Thank you, Satya Lakshmi. I know that you will always love me. Why? It is because I'm trying to do something good with the present. That is why. If you do that, you will have a lasting space in people's minds. Make the most of your life. Do wonderful things to help others. Human life, beyond everything, we are all just human beings, all struggling to survive. Somehow we are struggling to survive until we die. The only thing we can do in our life is to help each other. Nothing else. There is nothing else we can do. Ultimately, everything we do boils down to this: help each other, isn't it? So do that. Let us all do that. So all these classics speak to us. They are about us. They are wonderful texts that have enduring significance. And then Gitanjali by Rabindranath Tagore. As you know, Gitanjali means song offerings. Tagore speaks as a devotee to God, using the conventions of love poetry. He is like a beloved of God. Like a beloved speaks to the lover, the devotee speaks to God. Those 100+ verses that he wrote in Bengali and translated into English have a perennial impact on Indian literature and Western literature. In his introduction, W.B. Yeats has talked about how he was trying to read Gitanjali everywhere he went, in buses and trams. And he was so overcome by emotion that he couldn't read it. He was in tears reading it. He had to close the book so that other people will not see his tears. Such touching verses. Very romantic and about human condition. That is the importance of Gitanjali. All Quiet on the Western Front by Erich Maria Remarque. Have you heard of this novel? It is also a famous movie. It is a critique of the First World War. Set against the First World War, it is about how the soldiers of the World War were traumatized. It is a completely unromantic portrayal of war. Thank you, Anuradha. Please search my name and listen to all the videos before also. You will be benefited from it, I suppose. And do join us in Unacademy Special everyone. I'm doing a series on world classics there. And if possible, subscribe to Unacademy, because you will be able to join my complete course as well as a course on non-British literature that's going on right now. It will help you immensely, I promise. You can use the referral code Kalyani Vallath as one word and get 10% discount. All Quiet on the Western Front is one of the many novels of world literature that has shown the horror of war. Sitting in the comfort of our houses, it looks like war is great. We should defeat our enemy countries, we should do this, do that, drop bombs on them, like that we'll think. But not only for our soldiers, for anybody who is taking part in the war or affected by the war, war is an absurdity. So much killing, so much destruction, so primitive. War is so primitive in this age of technology and communications and such great development of the human mind. Nation leaders should sit together and talk over it. They should have control over each other in other ways, not war. What is the need to destroy human life? It is a very primitive and obsolete practice that is rooted in the evil in our human minds. War is unnecessary. If in India and Pakistan, for example, has differences, the leaders of these nations as well as the world leaders should talk over it and exercise control over these countries in other ways than war. Weapons should be banned because it is so much against humanity. So many hundreds of anti-war novels are there that have shown how horrible war is. All Quiet on the Western Front belongs to that category. Ulysses by James Joyce is the next classic of world literature that I have to talk to you about. Ulysses is, as you know, set in one day in Dublin, showing the life of Leopold Bloom, his wife Penelope Bloom, Molly Bloom, and Stephen Dedalus. 3 people, mostly. They are not heroes. They are such broken people, such vulgar people. The things they do are unspeakably vulgar and cheap, ordinary people. But they are the modern man, a representative of the modern man. There is so much of modernity and its criticism in Ulysses. That is why it is perhaps the greatest novel in 20th century. Ulysses has been considered the greatest novel in the 20th century because it is such an unconventional depiction of modernity and its vices and its pettiness, like never before. Any one of these classics that you examine, they are all like never before. The first ever, the most unconventional of them all. James Joyce's Ulysses plays with language and characterization and plot with such daring, with such brilliance and innovative energy, that he changed the pattern of world literature forever. Literature was never the same after Ulysses. That is the importance of Ulysses. When you teach any of these texts, dear friends, talk like them, talk about them or these works with passion and energy like I am trying to do, because it will impact on your students greatly. Students will have a great experience of reading these texts and studying these texts. So I am trying to do that. I hope I am succeeding. The next masterpiece of world literature I have for you is George Orwell's 1984. It is a novel about totalitarianism and tyranny, how power works upon people and destroys them. And as you know, it has an enduring significance. Even today, many world nations are like Oceania in 1984. Oppressive regimes. Did you understand? So, George Orwell's 1984 is an archetypal novel about tyranny and power, how people are oppressed in so many different ways across the world. Have you heard of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry's The Little Prince? It is an allegorical novel about a little prince visiting various planets. It's an allegory. It was written right after, it was a novel from 1943, after France got liberated. You know, there was so much trouble in France in the 1960s. And The Little Prince is an allegory of loneliness, of love, of friendship. It is a masterpiece. It is said that if you read this novel when you're 5 years old, it will read like one novel. If you read this novel when you're 15 years old, it will read like another novel. It will give you another meaning. If you read it when you're 50 years old, it will read like another novel. It has different levels of meaning. Thomas Mann's Magic Mountain is another archetypal novel about human condition and war. The Magic Mountain is about Hans Castorp going to the Alps to visit a cousin. But there, he is diagnosed with a little problem in his lung, which will lead to tuberculosis. But then it becomes a psychological or spiritual malady. You know, he can't leave that sanatorium in the Alps. Not because of any physical problem, but because of his spiritual malady. He stays there for 7 years and ultimately dies in the First World War. So it is a spiritual account of man's existence, spiritual malady of human condition. Shubham, you are asking me a question. Which time you take class? I have a 1 p.m. class as well as a 3 p.m. class. 1 to 2:30 and 3 to 5. But you can watch it anytime if you are not available at that time. F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby is another great classic of world literature because it is a novel about the materialistic society of the 1920s in America. How the bourgeois class, the middle class of the 1920s, spent a lot of money in luxury and partying, and how it led to a psychological or spiritual death. J. Gatsby, who is a criminal in the novel, turns out to be a better man than all the ordinary people who come to his party. His Great Gatsby parties are extravagant parties where the people indulge in. And the criminal J. Gatsby actually turns out to be a man of great spiritual power than the others. This is a novel that has been turned into a movie, Leonardo DiCaprio's movie, in which Amitabh Bachchan acted the role of Mayor Wolfshame. Amitabh Bachchan is acting in that movie, as you might know. Albert Camus, The Outsider or The Stranger. I am teaching world literature. World literature means all the classics. All the classics. These are all very important classics, canonical works that all of you need to know for NTA NET, SET, and anything you do in English literature. I am talking about English, American, European, post-colonial classics. The Outsider or The Stranger is also about a man turning into a mighty stranger against the society. He is numbed by the society, benumbed by the society. And he doesn't find meaning in any action. He just kills an Arab. And at the end, during his trial, we kind of realize that the society is more monstrous than this man himself. This is Meursault, the protagonist of Albert Camus' The Outsider, Meursault. Cry the Beloved Country by Alan Paton is a classic of post-colonialism. It talks about two fathers, James Jarvis and Stephen Kumalo. Stephen Kumalo's son has killed James Jarvis's son. It is about how colonialism destroys African societies, confuses the African youth, which is the theme of Things Fall Apart also. And the next classic I have to talk about is Elie Wiesel's Night. It is part of the Night trilogy about the Holocaust. Dawn, Day and Night. These are the three novels of Night trilogy by Elie Wiesel about the horrendous experiences that he underwent during the Holocaust. Hiroshima by John Hersey is also similarly about the Second World War. It is about the day on which the atom bomb was dropped in Hiroshima. Online in my YouTube channel, I teach every day in weekdays at 10 p.m. In Unacademy, I teach from 1 to 5. 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Hiroshima is another world classic you should know about. Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, as all of you know, began post-colonial studies, post-colonial literature. It is about how African society is torn apart by colonialism. You know, it is the story of Okonkwo who ultimately commits suicide. Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude is another world classic from Colombia. It is a saga of generations of a family told through magic realism. This is a classic of magic realism. Magic realism is a style of writing that emerged in Latin America against tyranny, against the horrors of reality and post-war society. The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan is about 4 Chinese families living in America. They are playing a game called Mahjong, and it becomes an allegory of their life. It is a very powerful novel that is part of post-colonialism. Please read about all this. Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett. I don't have to tell you, it is a classic because it allegorizes human condition during the war. How nobody belongs to this world. How there is no hope in this world. There is no hope in this world for any of us. Herzog by Saul Bellow is another amazing post-war text written by the Jewish American writer about a middle-aged man and his traumas relating to existence. Herzog begins with a lot of letters that Herzog, the character, is writing to come to terms with himself. Please remember to read. Allen Ginsberg's Howl is another important text which is against capitalism, against war, against materialism and consumerism. It is a powerful poem of rebellion. It is also against the conventions of writing that existed until then. Kamala Markandeya's Nectar in a Sieve from India. It was a bestseller. It is about the rural-urban divide. Kamala Markandeya in Nectar in a Sieve talks about the story of Rukmini and Nathan. Through them, she talks about how rural India changed over to urban India after independence. And this video will be there in Unacademy YouTube channel. You can watch it anytime. Nectar in a Sieve is a classic and a bestseller. Millions of copies it sold. The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood is a dystopian novel that shows how power works on us, how authorities control us, hegemonic potential of authorities over ordinary people. That is what this is about. It is an imaginary story set in the future, or the story of Offred, a handmaid, and her attempts to escape. The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, as all of you know, is a very classic text of a girl's dream to get blue eyes so that she will get social acceptance. And that girl is the African American girl, Pecola Breedlove. But all Pecola gets is rape by her own father. All Pecola gets is rejection and madness and possible death. It is the story of the trauma of an African American girl, written by Toni Morrison. All of Toni Morrison's novels are classics of world literature, we can say. Of course, she won Nobel Prize and she passed away also recently, a few years ago, recently. Kafir Boy, have you heard of this novel? It is actually an autobiography, the true story of a black youth's coming of age in apartheid South Africa. Mark Mathabane, very famous autobiography, Kafir Boy. It is set in apartheid South Africa, that is its importance. Apartheid is another horrendous reality that many writers like Nadine Gordimer, J.M. Coetzee, etc. have talked about. Isabel Allende is a very important Latin American writer. She wrote The House of Spirits. The House of Spirits is about generations of a family. It's a spectacular novel written in magic realism. The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho is about a boy, Santiago. He's an Andalusian shepherd and he's going in search of the pyramids. And he is following his dream. The importance of following your dream, that is the theme of Alchemist. Gao Xinjian's Soul Mountain. It is a very major book that is about rural China and the protagonist's journey, in search of a mountain. The protagonist is diagnosed with cancer wrongly, and this novel is partly autobiographical. This is a very major Chinese writer. This novel, Soul Mountain. Life of Pi, everybody knows, is a classic of post-colonialism, written by Jan Martel, made very famous by Ang Lee's movie. Piscine Patel is stranded in a boat with a Bengal tiger. And how he will escape, and this Bengal tiger almost becomes a super human presence or a figment of imagination. What is reality and what is fiction is kind of blurred in this novel. Then Patrick White's Wars. Patrick White's Wars is also about a journey. Patrick White writes about man Voss, Johann Ulrich Voss, and his journey to the interior of Australia. He's exploring Australia, and many of the explorers die in the process. That is a very classic novel, Voss, for which Patrick White won Nobel Prize. The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini, which tells the story of two Afghan boys, Amir and Hassan, and their relationship that is as equally amazing as Thousand Splendid Suns, which is the story of two women. Both these are famous classics, unforgettable stories of nationality and relationship and rich and poor, bringing together so many brilliant elements. The Joys of Motherhood by Buchi Emecheta, which is about Innu Ego and her epic journey of motherhood. She becomes many men's wife, she has many children, and ultimately she becomes a goddess. She becomes a goddess who will not grant motherhood to her devotees. Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, the story of the 15-year-old girl Kambili and her struggle with religion, her father's patriarchal power. That is the story of Purple Hibiscus. Jamaica Kincaid's Annie John, her struggle with her mother. Until she's 17 years old, she goes to England to learn nursing. A girl's growing up and struggles with her own mother, love and quarrelsome relationship with her mother. Midnight Children by Salman Rushdie. I don't have to tell you what a classic it is. The story of India, Pakistan, Burma, Bangladesh, such a vast canvas, all told through the eyes of Salim Sinai. Reading Lolita in Tehran is a partly autobiographical narrative of Azar Nafisi, who lived in the very oppressive Iran, and she was expelled from the university where she was a teacher for refusing to wear the veil, and she started a book club for young girls. And Azar Nafisi talks about how in Iran she read world classics along with her students. She read Lolita, Great Gatsby, Henry James's Daisy Miller, and Jane Austen. These are the works that she has talked about. It is in 4 parts: Lolita, Great Gatsby, Henry Miller's Daisy, and Jane Austen. Then A God of Small Things, which is a Booker Prize winner, and it is about politics. It is about society and culture. It is a story told from the perspective of 2 twins about adult life. And it is about caste and class, gender, so many elements intertwined in a magnificent narrative. God of Small Things, the Booker Prize winner. And The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri, also the story of a person coming to terms with the society. Gogol is the story of Ashok and Ashima. And Gogol is not happy with his family. He does not identify with his father and his family, but ultimately he learns to identify with them. The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak is the story narrated by Death during the Second World War. Liesel, that is the name of the girl, Liesel is stealing books from the Nazi book burning efforts. Nazis burned books, and Liesel, the protagonist, is stealing those books and reading them. And the narrative is told by Death himself. So that brings us to the end of this session. I am glad that many of you liked it. Thank you very much. I hope you will read these books for yourself, and that will be the proper foundation for your learning. Thank you very much. Meet you again another weekend in Unacademy YouTube. Please subscribe to Unacademy with my referral code Kalyani Vallath as one word, because then you will get all the videos and PDF, and it will be a very proper foundation for your research. Rohinton Mystery is not as great a writer compared to any of these people. That is why I did not include Rohinton Mystery. Such a Long Journey is a wonderful novel, but nobody will say it is a world classic, I think. Okay, thank you guys. Bye.